Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all. We had a Judiciary Committee markup, and I had one other commitment. Otherwise, I would have been here to hear your testimony. And I'm only going to probably ask one question. I want to start, though, by thanking Secretary Esper. He was down at Fort Bragg. I was with him on Friday. We got an opportunity to visit two houses, the Bloods and the Blankenships. We got to meet little Jason, a little 18-month-old that's living in unacceptable housing conditions. We heard stories from a very empowered wife, Miss Blood, who is standing up for other people who I think are a little bit intimidated and were afraid to come forward. I frankly believe that we've somehow drifted with a program that started out well in 1996, worked well for a while, but now we're in the wrong place. I, for one, am not prepared to simply place blame on any link in the chain, though, because my guess is the housing providers are at fault, the command is at fault, the department is at fault, and Congress is at fault for taking their eye off this ball. The one thing that I tell everybody when I get before a committee hearing, if you're in North Carolina and you're living in a house that has military housing that has unacceptable conditions, if you haven't gotten the right reaction from your command, call my office. It'll be casework, and I'll guarantee you it'll move to the top of the stack. I also want to thank General Milley for coming in and talking about the plans, and Secretary Spencer for the phone call that we had, and I know I'll have discussions with all of you over time. But we've got, I'm not going to let go of this for the remaining Congress. We will have another oversight hearing with the chairman's blessing to see where the progress is. And I'm not talking about next year. I'm talking on fairly short intervals, because if you look at this is not rocket science. We can fix this, and it starts by doing what every branch has said they're going to do. They're going to go out and knock on every door and request permission to come in and see things that they think are unacceptable. Many of them will be okay. Some of them won't. All of them need to be identified. I do want to ask a question, and it's probably less of a question, but more of a commitment from you all. It's been brought to my attention that some of the housing providers go to these young people. I mean, these are young, it may be the first lease they've ever signed. And they go to these big organizations. Some of the ones are smaller, and these big organizations waive a non-disclosure agreement in front of them and say, if you sign this non-disclosure agreement, there may be actually some sort of a bonus or a payment that you will be entitled to if you don't bring up what may be inadequate housing. That's at least how I read it. I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but here's what I'd like to find out if we can do immediately. Rescind every damn one of these that have been signed. Because it looks to me, and I don't mean to be cynical, but this is a practice by the housing providers. They better come up with a damn good reason for having somebody sign on to this, because I've been a landlord before. It would have never occurred to me to say, I want you to sign away your right to say you're living in inadequate conditions. I don't know if that makes sense to any of y'all. I'm not going to ask you to go down the line, because God forbid you say it does. Because I can't imagine on any level why it would make sense to have a new tenant, these young kids, asked to sign this agreement, not understand the implications of it. So in my view, if any of these agreements are in force, I expect them to be rescinded over the next 30 days. And over the next 30 days, if they're not rescinded, I want to know what housing company wants to come before me and tell me why it makes sense. Tell me the business reason why it makes sense. Tell me the reason why it's for the good of the tenant. I'd love to have that conversation. We'll have it in an open hearing. We'll have it in my office. But I'll guarantee you, this has got to stop. Again, all of you have responded the way I would expect you to as the great leaders that you are. We have drifted. I can't imagine that any of you would have knowingly allowed the conditions that we've seen actually persist. But now I expect every one of you to be on the tip of the spear to fix it. And everybody in command better be in touch with their folks that they've been entrusted to take care of. They better fix it. And they better applaud people who are coming forward in these communities and stepping up and being the ones that are saying, this is wrong. This is not the way we treat our men and women in uniform. And I know you all agree with this, but this has got to be on short intervals. This isn't something we come back to next year and say, how have you done over the last year? We will have meetings in my office. We will have as many hearings as the chair will allow me to have. I want to see end to end where you're making progress, and I want to see short interval timelines. But over the next 30 days, I want to see every damn one of these canceled unless you want to walk into my office with the housing provider that thinks it's a good idea and build a case for me removing myself or changing that position. So thank you all for being here. And the last thing I would ask every member of the Senate to do, if you've got a military installation anywhere in your state, go visit them. I'm going to go knock on a few doors down at Camp Lejeune and down at Fort Bragg. I'm not going to do it announced. I'm going to walk on a door, and I'm going to do exactly what you guys are doing. I'm going to knock on the door and say, can I come in and take a look around? And it better be trending in the right direction. Because you all know I've got a history of supporting you. I've got a lot of confidence in every one of you. I know you can fix this problem, but this has to be a top priority. And these folks better make sure, the housing providers better make sure that unacceptable business practices, I don't know how to do your jobs in terms of waging war, but I know how to run a business. This kind of business practice actually sets off a series of thoughts in my mind that make me wonder just how far these businesses have drifted. And we're going to find them. And the ones that haven't addressed this before I find them, there's going to be a consequence. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your commitment to taking care of our men and women in uniform.
Thank you, Senator Tillis.